So have you ever wondered how much the top UFL players get paid? Today we'll take a deep dive into the numbers and explore what these salaries mean for the future of spring football. While the average UFL player makes about $55,000 a season, some players negotiated significantly higher salaries than the league average. So before we get into the top earners and what they've earned this year, it's essential to understand the league's standard salary framework. So the active salary is about $5,500 per week for a 10-week season. So that's about, again, $55,000 a year. But on top of that, they also get housing stipend. The players get about $400 per week for that, $850 a week for attending training camp. And then also the player of the week for performance bonuses. They get about $1,000 per, winning the player of the week. And also the all UFL team, the player will get about $2,500 for that. And the player of the year gets about $5,000, with the MVP getting about $7,500, right? So for the 5 highest players, let's hop into it. And it probably doesn't surprise you that the 5 highest paid players are all in the quarterback position group, right? So let's take a closer look at the top 5 earners in the UFL and how their salaries stand out compared to the rest of the league, right? So number 1, we have a guy by the name of Brett Hundley. He was a QB for the Vegas Vipers, earns about $200,000 base salary in the 2023 XFL season. So as a high-profile quarterback, this guy Hundley, basically his salary was significantly higher than the rest of the league. It reflected his experience and marketability being the number 1 reason why his salary was so much higher than everybody else's, okay? So Jordan Taamu, he's a quarterback with the DC Defenders. This guy had over $100,000 in the 2023 XFL season. The Taamu's his dynamic playing style and leadership qualities, I guess, is what justify his elevated pay compared to the rest of the players making around $55,000 a year. So AJ Mccarron, we all know who that guy is, right? But he played for the St. Louis Battlehawks, ex-NFL player, college championship winner with Alabama, right? So he had his main thing that pushed his salary higher than everybody else was his ex-NFL experience, and also McCarron's presence added credibility and drew fan interest for the overall team as a whole, right? So Luis Perez comes in at number 4. He was a QB with the Arlington Renegades. This guy didn't have his specific earnings displayed, but it's kind of figured that as a starting quarterback with the championship success, his earnings were above the league average. So Perez's consistent performance and leadership skills is what contribute to his overall team success, which justified his earnings being higher than the league average. Now, our last guy coming in on the list, last QB for the Michigan Panthers by the name of EJ Perry. He also did not disclose his earnings, but his compensation was higher than the standard player's salary. And it was mainly because his role as a starter underscored his team's value, right? So what do all of these salary variations mean for the league and sustainability and growth, right? For the overall league sustainability and growth. So the first thing is that financial stability, right? Allocating substantial salaries to select players could strain the league's finances, especially during its development phase. So the league will have to be careful allocating, big money to just one player when they are looking to invest in different areas that can improve the overall just notoriety of the league. Another thing is that they have to look out for when, disclosing the salaries or just when dispersing the salaries is the player morale, right? So the significant pay gaps between players can lead to a dissatisfaction among the teammates, potentially affecting their on-field cohesion and togetherness. If the center's earning $50,000 a year while the quarterback's earning $200,000 a year, one guy has to get maybe have to get a job after the season ends if they want to live above, average, and then another guy is living pretty comfortable at a minimum wage, or at a middle class lifestyle at $200,000, right? So that is something that they will have to keep in mind, just overall player morale. Talent acquisition, right? So competitive salaries for marquee players, this is a good thing that they really can think about as far as with paying certain high players, is because if they pay certain players higher, then it attracts higher talent, right? And that boosts the overall league's profile and viewership, like AJ Mccarron. AJ Mccarron coming to the XFL is how I personally ever heard of the XFL, I'm a huge Cincinnati Bengals fan. You see me rocking the orange. I'm a huge Cincinnati Bengals fan. That's my squad, that's my team, that's my city, right? That being said, me being born and raised in Cincinnati and loving the Bengals, AJ Mccarron was like our third string or fourth string quarterback a couple of years ago. Mid-season, we realized he just wasn't needed. We cut him, or I think before the season. Either way, he ended up joining the XFL, the St. Louis team I told you about. By that time, I ended up hearing about him doing really good in the XFL, and that's how I heard about the XFL, because AJ Mccarron was doing good in the XFL. So that being said, it may be worth it to pay some marquee players that maybe, just aren't hitting the ceiling that they imagine in the NFL, and they're coming back down to the XFL or UFL, with just currently the UFL. It may be worth it to pay them a lot because they got, certain fans that may be still interested in that player that could draw interest to the actual league in and of itself. So it's a defined line, a fine balance that I'm happy I don't have to figure out, but I trust the people up there at the UFL to figure it out. They got this far. Sustainability is a big concern as well, because when you balance the attractive player salaries with the league revenue streams, it's crucial to avoid financial pitfalls experienced by previous spring leagues. There's been other leagues that's paid players a ton of money, but that being said, they're paying just one player a ton of money and not investing back into the business and drawing more viewership. So it's a fine line that, again, I don't have to figure out, but there's people that's paid a lot of money to figure that out, right? So let's compare this with the NFL salaries as it comes to a single player. How do these UFL salaries stack up against the NFL? Now, it's important to, of course, stay in your lane. But again, most of the UFL players and people that's maybe watching this, you may be someone who's interested in joining the actual NFL. You probably already know what the stats are. But for those of you who don't know what the stats are, the average NFL salary is about $2.8 million a year. And that's before taxes. Keep in mind, these NFL player taxes they're getting taxed differently, right? Because they're getting taxed by each state. So it's different as far as how much they may come out with. It's going to be a lot less than an entrepreneur who's able to invest and make certain movements before they get taxed, right? So either way, they get about $53,000 a week. And no matter how you slice it, that is a lot of money compared to, again, the UFL is making about $55,000 a year. Your average NFL, once you make the roster, you get about $53,000 a week compared to what somebody is making in a year. NFL practice squad players, they can earn over about $200,000 in a season, which is significantly higher than the UFL average, which is just something, to keep in mind. But again, a lot of UFL players know this, and that's why they're striving to at least make a practice squad, right? So as it comes to the league, what steps can the UFL take to ensure long-term success? I think it's interesting because since I've been alive, I've always just been an NFL football player, right? I mean, an NFL football fan. You see my cup, right? Got the Bengals cup. With me being a huge NFL football fan, that, I never paid attention to other leagues. I've heard about the Canadian Football League, especially with what's our guy? Megatron, when, what I'm saying, I think he got messed up, or was it Megatron? I believe it was Megatron. Anyway, a lot of people have played. Johnny Manziel, a lot of people have played in the Canadian Football League. That being said, I've never really heard about the UFL until I just told you about, what happened as far as me learning about it through AJ Mccarron. The Arena Football League, I've heard a little bit about it, but not as much. We may be able to do a video on that. The bottom line is, what steps can the UFL take to ensure long-term success, that they're not just another league that just comes and goes, right? So there's three things that they can do. Number one is implement tiered salary structures. So basically introduce performance-based incentives to reward standout players without disrupting financial balance, right? So if you tiered, then it understands that, hey, this guy's a tier 2 player, so he gets paid tier 2 money, and that way a guy that's getting paid less money, they understand that they're a tier 3 player, so they're going to get paid less money than a tier 2 guy, depending on how you're doing it. But we want to just say tier 1 is going to be the top tier. Tier 3 is less tier, right? So that being said, a tier 3 guy knows his role, so he's not just like, this is why this one guy getting paid, right? Enhance revenue streams, which is a big one that's obvious. I'm a huge Bengals fan again, and the NFL has just got like a new TV deal, which is giving the Bengals more money to potentially sign T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Trey Henderson, and plus add more players to the defense and more offensive line. We need a lot of help to get to the Super Bowl, but that's another story for another day. Either way, my point is them being able to have more money come in through the TV deal has raised the cap for the NFL, allowing the team owners to invest more back into the team and allow us fans to retain our happiness and joy and feel like we can make it to the Super Bowl next year. So basically, they got to focus on expanding their broadcasting rights, sponsorships, and merchandise sales to support higher player salaries. Okay. Last thing here is foster player development, which simply means invest in training and facilities to improve the overall quality of play, attracting more fans and investors. I'm not, the most privy when it comes to the UFL and all of their facilities and things like that, but I actually just came across while doing some research, I guess they have a new facility. The UFL does have a new facility that they just posted up not too long ago, and it shows like a workout facility. I wonder how the actual players and their individual teams, how their facilities look. So either way, investing in the development of these players and other teams can improve just long-term success of viewers being, watching players that are competing at a high level. You feel me? All right, so the UFL approach to player compensation is a pivotal factor overall in its evolution. I would like for you guys to join the conversation, share your thoughts on the league's salary structure and its impact on the future of spring football. And also feel free to subscribe, consider subscribing for more in-depth analysis and updates on all the football leagues. Subscribe to our channel, and stay connected with us on social media for the latest news and discussions. Until next time, man, as always, get the stepping. Hey.